Welcome back to H&N Studios. We are live on Lighthouse. Today our guest is Turista. Take it away, guys.
Woo!
Thank you for being with us here today, you guys. It's really, really nice to have you here playing in our studio.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I want to start with, where are you guys from?
Well, I'm originally from Monterey, born and raised, and these fellas.
Seaside.
Fresno, Baltimore, and then here.
Nice. So we got some local people. And how did you all meet?
Through record store.
Yeah, Clark and I went to high school together, actually. And we used to play in bands when we were, 19? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just coincidentally ended up living here, met Alex, and just went for it.
How did you get into music in the first place?
Oh, about me? So my dad plays guitar, and it's just always been around the living room.
Yeah.
And naturally, the Beatles were always playing in the background,
Yeah.
so that was a huge influence for me to pick it up.
Awesome.
My parents were always playing the Beatles or like the Hair soundtrack.
Yeah, of course. What's your favorite Beatles song?
Oof. Yes, it is.
Ooh, okay. I actually don't think I know that one off the
Deep
top
cut.
of my head.
It's
Yeah,
a B-side,
for
I
sure.
think.
Now you work in a record shop, you said, right?
I do.
So you're pretty well versed in music discography. So you know all those deep cuts.
Sure,
You
yeah.
know, you're just definitely your knowledge base is there, right?
Yeah, and it's great to share it with, people that come through the door. That's
Yeah.
like the best thing about working at a record store
It's free.
is that you can influence other people with something they might not know.
Very cool. Now I know that you also do some DJing too, right, Alex?
Yeah, I do.
Cool. And you DJ with vinyl, right?
All vinyl, 45s and 12-inch, and it's just a fun format.
What's your go-to vinyl record for when you're playing a set?
Poppin' his.
I like playing a lot of Nigerian compilations lately. It's just nice to just, again, share music that maybe people in this area aren't familiar with.
Well, that's great. So what would you call the genre that you're playing with us today?
Easy listening, if you can call it that. I don't know. It's all over the place.
Yeah, I guess I like to ask, what are 3 artists that influence the sound that you're coming out with?
Me particularly, I love jazz, and so I think a lot of it comes from that. I never learned how to play it. I was never in band, so I don't know, just influences by the stuff that I'm into now have been influential with these guys.
Yeah.
And also things that don't sound like us seem to be a huge influence.
For example?
Well, we all listen to different music, and sorry, I just started to hear myself. It's weird. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, the three of us were into totally different kinds of music, and oddly enough, what we play really doesn't sound like anything that we're into, right? I mean, individually. But I think our similarities come together.
I mean, drum-wise, Fugazi was big. And then Jeremiah Green from Modest Mouse was big for me.
Yeah,
R.I.P.
Eric Judy from Modest Mouse. Yeah.
Well, what's kind of cool about when you're playing that sort of improvised style is that, it's all about feel. You're not necessarily trying to create any particular sound. You're just going with the flow. So a lot of it is so personal. I think that's really cool.
The reverb helps a lot too.
Yeah, yeah. Reverb is a big influence for me as well. Yeah, what does it mean to you to be able to play this type of music?
It's just rewarding, It's like telepathic communication for me with these guys, We'll play for 30 minutes straight, and at the end of it, it's like this rewarding experience, and none of us had to speak to each other or sing a single note. It's just our instruments talking to each other.
That's cool. Tell me a bit about your setup here. Is there anything specific you got going on with your gear?
My gear specifically is super laid back. I'm literally playing through the amp, and so Scoots has all these pedals.
Yeah. I'm kind of. The bassist isn't usually the one with the big pedal board, but I got this little skateboard pedal board. I got it 5 Below, and a rubber band strapped some cheap pedals to it. I like the way it sounds.
I like that a lot. I have a question. Is aesthetic important to you as a band?
Yeah. You know, I think without telling each other that, it matters. And that's why we've been together for so long. We just kind of aesthetically know our backgrounds and know what we kind of want to put into this pot.
Cool.
Yeah, we all, if I could add to that, I listen to a lot of soundtracks myself, and we kind of put on a projector when we jam, kind of for some ambiance, right? And
Yeah.
we'll kind of play along to it. I just thought of an influence, Tarantell from San Francisco, big influence for me. We use a lot of the same videos they used to use. Shout out Tarantell.
Cool. I'm going to come back and touch on that later. My last question for now is, what's the meaning behind the band name? Is there a story there?
Yeah, well, I think originally we wanted it to be locally influenced, but not be corny about it. You know, like we weren't going to be called the Sea Otters or something like that.
Stokes Adobes.
And so Turista, from my understanding, is like a tourist. And so there's a lot of tourists that come and go through this area. And I'm Mexican, so Spanish just kind of worked out. But really, you came up with the name.
Yeah, I just thought it sounded cool, fun to say. Sort of represents our tourist economy around here, but
Awesome. Well, I'd like to get back to the music.
Cool.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. That was amazing. I know that typically your songs are pretty long form, so I appreciate you kind of shortening and condensing it down for us. We get to go on that ride with you, so
Thanks for coming along.
yeah, we're having fun. So tell me a little bit about your process. You said you kind of jam in rehearsals and see what happens. Is that
Yeah, we play in the dark. That's like one of the key ingredients to our sound, I think. And we use a projector. And I think initially we kind of wanted to score these black and white films and just kind of use that to our advantage instead of just being a spotlight.
cool? Yeah, what do you like? So you use projection during your rehearsals, and you also use it on stage.
Yeah.
What do you like about using it on stage?
Well, it's more of like a performance piece, I think.
Yeah, it adds a visual element when we play.
It also takes the attention off of us.
Also,
Yeah.
no one can see Clark, so no one stares at him.
I'm beautiful inside.
What are you mentioned Tarantelle as one of your visual influences for that.
Yeah.
What are some other influences that you have for your visuals?
Godspeed You, Black Emperor.
Yeah, for sure. You go to a show nowadays and it's like a visual component is basically expected, right? Especially like the big shows. It's a performance, like Alex was saying. So we want to give people something to look at, something to hear.
Yeah, totally. What inspires your creativity, whether it's in this band or elsewhere in your lives?
Life.
Life, yeah. Life
Beautiful.
experiences, yeah.
Do you have
Family.
any family?
Family and beer.
Family and beer. Nice.
A little bit of weed.
Do you have any goals as a band?
I think we're just rolling with the punches and not trying to be too serious about it, but actually have a drive. I don't know.
Yeah, just play live as much as we can. Maybe put
Yeah.
something on vinyl someday. That might be fun.
Yeah, we're very DIY, and that's what I love about this project is that if all our rehearsals we record through my phone, and then we just put them on tape, and we make like 10, 12 copies, and that's been like 5 tapes so far.
Yeah, pretty good amount. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's awesome, man. I think we're ready for round 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. That was amazing. Why don't you go ahead and introduce your bandmates?
We're Turista. This is Truett Grant on bass, and then we got Clark Russell on drums, and I'm Alex Ramirez. Thank you.
Cool. I just got a couple of quick lightning round questions for y'all.
Yeah.
Firstly, what's the favorite venue you've played locally or abroad?
Old Capitol Books for me. That's been a lot of fun. You wouldn't really see that as a venue, but the intimacy is really important to us, and I feel like that just adds more to the magic.
Very cool. What's the best spot to eat in Monterey County?
For me, my favorite is Monterey Cookhouse on Fremont.
Okay. What kind of food is that?
Just all around American, Italian. It's awesome. It's
Nice.
pretty. Nobody really talks about it, so I'm kind of giving secrets out.
Let's blow it up, man.
El Tortuga.
El Tortuga.
La Tortuga.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, La Tortuga,
yes.
Seaside.
Yeah.
The tortas there are insane. Do you guys have any social media or website or anything that people can find you on?
What are we at Turista Band on Instagram?
Yeah,
We
at
got a
Turista Band on Instagram, and then our Bandcamp.
Spotify.
What's our Bandcamp?
I think it's Turista Band.
Turista Band at Bandcamp.
Cool.
We'll see you on there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys again for coming. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Really, really good time for us.
This is an honor. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for having us. We've been looking forward to this for a while.
Cool, man. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you for all your work and just hosting us. Special.
Very generous.
Log on,
course.
chat with us.
Will do. See you soon.
Bye.